You can eat the exact same thing 2 days in a row. One day you're totally fine. The next day you're totally bloated, cramping, maybe running to the bathroom, or so backed up and uncomfortable that you can't button your pants by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Same food, completely different body. And you started to feel like you're playing a game that nobody told you the rules to, where your own stomach is unpredictable and you never know which version you're going to get. So if your gut has become this thing that you have to manage and negotiate with and you can't trust, this one's for you. And there is a reason it's so tied to your stress level. And first, I want you to understand something. You're not imagining the connection. I know you've probably noticed that your worst gut days line up with your most stressful days. And maybe you've said so and been told that these things are not related or that it's just IBS, or maybe here's a pamphlet and off you go. Good luck. Okay, they're absolutely related. Your gut and your stress are not two separate systems having some sort of a coincidence. They are actually in constant conversation. So they're so tightly linked that what happens in your stress life shows up almost immediately in your stomach. And that's not in your head, it's actually biology. And once you see how connected they are, your unpredictable gut actually stops becoming a mystery and becomes something you can actually begin to work with. So let's answer the strangest part. How can the same food, two completely different things on two completely different days, and still be the same food? Well, if this was really about food, it would be consistent. Same input, same output. The fact is, it's not consistent, right? And that lack of consistency is the biggest clue you have. And it points away from the food and towards something else entirely: the state your body was in when the food arrived. Now, here's the picture I want you to hold. Imagine a restaurant and it's got a kitchen in the back and everything's all calm, and that kitchen, it runs beautifully. Food comes in, it gets prepped, it gets cooked, it gets fully digested. That's your digestion on a good day. Now, imagine the fire alarm goes off in the building. Ding, 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 ding. Well, what happens in that kitchen? Oh, everything stops. Nobody like stands there calmly chopping vegetables while the building might be on fire. No, the staff drops everything, deals with the emergency, and that is exactly what your body does when it senses stress, when it senses a fire. It pulls resources away from your digestion because breaking down lunch is not a priority when you might have to run from something. So food just sits there, and that is your bloating. Now, the 2 different day thing, it makes complete sense, right? How one food can cause two different results on 2 different days. Well, on a calm day, you eat the food, your kitchen is open and it handles it fine. But on a stressful day, you eat the exact same food, but the alarm is going and the kitchen is closed. And that food now has nowhere to go. Same meal, completely different body, because your body was in a completely different state when it arrived. It was never really about the food itself. It was about whether the kitchen was open for business or it was under fire when that food actually showed up. So, this is the body led method in one of the clearest forms. Okay. When your body is stuck in survival, paying that survival tax, like braced, running on borrowed energy, digestion is one of the very first things it turns down because it's not essential in an emergency. And if your body is living in that brace state most of the time, your kitchen, it's closed most of the time, which means it's not necessarily a food problem that you're managing, it's a state problem. And here's something most women don't realize, which makes this even more worth solving. You see, your gut is it's not just the place where you digest your food. It is quietly doing a huge amount of other work for you. So much of what steadies your mood, your energy, it actually gets made down there in your gut, which means that when the kitchen is closed for months and months and months on end, you don't just get bloated. You feel more anxious, you feel flatter, you feel more tired, and there's no loop running, right? That like this is what's I should say there is a loop running. This is what's going on over and over and over again. The stress closes the kitchen. The closed kitchen makes you feel worse. Okay. Feeling worse is more stress. And then like around and around and around that goes. So your gut and your stress, they aren't just connected. They're feeding one another, right? It just keeps going, which is exactly why chasing from the food side alone often fails, right? And this happens all the time. I see it always in my practice because you're trying to fix one end of the loop while the other one keeps winding it right back up. So you can fix this, but if you've never fixed this, it just like keeps going like that. So that's the trap so many women fall into with their gut. They turn it into like just a food investigation. They cut out gluten, they cut out dairy, they cut out nightshades, then they cut out the FODMAPs, right? Then half the produce aisle. The next thing you know, they're living on like 6 foods. They're terrified to deviate and they're still bloated. And listen, I get it. Sometimes food is genuinely a part of it. I don't want to negate that at all, okay? Because that's real and it's worth looking at. But if you've been narrowing and narrowing and narrowing and narrowing and it's not fixed, that's your sign. The food was never the whole story. You can't fix a closed kitchen problem by just changing the menu. One of our clients, when she came in, so I want to protect her identity. So I'm going to call her Danielle. So when Danielle came in, so she's a top tier executive for a Fortune 500 company. And she's got a lot of responsibility on her plate. And she would find that every time that there was a big meeting at work, all of this digestive stuff would just come back. And it was interesting because when she first started working with us in our practice, she had great results. And then after a few weeks, we started to notice this pattern. Like, okay, you're feeling really great, but then all of a sudden, what happened that everything changed? And the more she began to look and track, she realized like, oh my gosh, these digestive upsets, they're coinciding with, it was a specific kind of business meeting that she was having. And it was literally like clockwork. It was a textbook, classic example. But once we started working on managing what was happening with her body physiologically every single time that meeting was coming up, once we turn down that nervous system. And yes, we had some gut healing to do. Once that happened, it's like the kitchen turned back on. Her stress state settled. And it wasn't because she was eliminating a whole bunch of these foods. It was literally that her body could relax. Okay. And I'll be honest with you guys, right? If this doesn't get addressed, which happens for some women, I see it begin to shrink women's lives. Right? For this woman that I've called Danielle, just for anonymity, what was happening is the unpredictability of her digestive issues. She just like quit. She stopped going out with friends. She said, I don't want to go out with people because I don't know how I'm going to feel. And that became a big thing. You see, what happens for women is first, it's just a discomfort. And then you start planning your life around it, scoping out where the bathroom is, dreading the work lunch, saying no to the dinner because you don't know which version of your stomach is going to be arriving that night to dinner. You start living smaller and smaller and smaller to manage it. And the saddest part is that you start to think of yourself as someone with a delicate stomach, someone who can't do the normal things that other people do, someone who has to tiptoe their way through life. When the whole time it was never about a delicate stomach. It was It was a body that was never calm enough to run the kitchen, right? That kitchen. So you don't have to keep building your life around what's happening with your stomach. So here's the hopeful part. You may not have a difficult gut at all. You may have a perfectly capable digestive system that simply hasn't been allowed to work because your body's been in this emergency mode for too long to ever open up the kitchen. And when you help your body come down out of that state, when the alarm finally stops, the kitchen comes back online. Foods, the foods that you were scared of, they become easier again. The bloating begins to cease, the unpredictability settles, not because you found some perfect diet. That's not it. It's because your body finally felt calm enough to do the things you always knew to do, right? Or the things it always knew how to do. And getting back a comfortable, trusting relationship with food and your stomach, honestly, that's a bigger relief than most women even allow themselves to hope for. So, where do you start? You don't start with another food to cut. You start by helping your body come down out of that brace state so the kitchen can finally reopen. So I made a free 21-day nervous system calibration for exactly that. 2 small text messages a day, texted straight to you for 3 weeks, that begin telling your body it's safe to stop bracing and start digesting. And yes, it's free. You can find the link below. It's go.thisisdrzcom/nervous system. And of course, if you know a woman who's down to 6 safe foods and still feels miserable, send this to her as well. She might be so relieved to hear that it was never really about the food. All right, this is Dr. Z. See you next time.